Welcome to episode 11 of the Ask the Law Firm Seller Show. My name is Jeremy Poock, and I lead Senior Attorney Match. In today's Ask Show, we'll have two segments. Segment one will be a Q&A where we'll address three questions today. And segment two is going to be Poock's Post. So let's jump right into it with Q&A. Our first question. Well, our first question today is, what if I sell my law firm a year too early, ... or a year too late? Okay, so I think about this question, I think about my stepfather. And my stepfather says to me often, you can never be too early, right? Like in the context of that is you can't be too early to get to the airport. Can't be too early to get to the restaurant where you have a reservation or you want to get seating at that restaurant. So proverbially, that is, you don't want to miss the boat. And when it comes to whether you should be thinking about selling your law firm a year too early, what we're showing here is that there are 5 components to valuing a law firm. And this is what senior attorneys, that is attorneys that have practiced more than 30 years, they've worked their entire careers to develop these 5 components of value, which consist of the client list and referral source list. That's the book of business that you've developed over the course of your career. The goodwill that you've developed in your community, state, regionally, sometimes even nationally or internationally. Subject matter knowledge. Attorneys and law firms, they develop subject matter knowledge in particular practice areas over the course of their careers. And more now that we're in the digital age, law firms are developing digital value. They're developing brand value. They are accumulating Google reviews. And this is a new area of valuing law firms. And absolutely, it is growing in value, those five components of value. Next is the synergy value. So the synergy value that growing law firms want and need from senior attorney-led firms. That is, if we're thinking about selling your law firm and curious about, okay, am I doing this too early or not? Well, let's look at the synergy value that your law firm would present to a growing law firm. Senior attorneys offer 4 components of synergy value, and those consist of the instant client growth, bringing your book of business to a growing law firm. They absolutely need and want that instant client growth. The combined workforce. Growing firms, not only they need clients, but they need lawyers and parastaff to get the work done. Most senior attorney-led firms have both. They have the senior attorney rainmakers, and they also have lawyers and parastaff that do the work. Third is cumulative expertise, right? You've developed that expertise in a number of practice areas over the course of your career. If you're joining a firm that practices in the same practice areas, that cumulative expertise that a senior attorney-led firm presents great synergy value to a growing law firm. And then the 4th component of synergy value is the marketing value. Often that is a land of opportunity for growing law firms to take advantage of, because most senior attorney-led firms today, they've not fully embraced the digital age. Growing law firms, though, what do they want and need? They need digital content. Senior attorney-led firms are sitting on treasure troves of digital content, those YouTube videos that senior attorneys could be recording based on all that cumulative expertise that they have, podcasts, e-newsletters, let alone just connecting with clients and referral sources on LinkedIn and other forms of social media. Now let's look at this a different way. Because when you're considering selling your law firm, we have to be thinking about what it is that a growing law firm, okay, what do they want and need? Okay, what most growing law firms want and need are 3 resources, okay? They need more new clients, they need an experienced workforce, and they need digital content to continue their growth. And as senior attorneys are considering, okay, should I sell my law firm a year too early? Well, when you have those 3 resources that growing law firms want and need, we certainly encourage senior attorneys to be considering selling their law practices. And now let's look at it from the focus of the clients that senior attorney-led firms bring to growing law firms. Because when we think of law firms, so just to go 30,000 feet for a second, Okay, what is the energy source for pretty much every single law firm? The energy source is clients. And when senior attorneys are considering selling their law firms, we can think of those 5 components of value that we described before, where they're really like windmills. And those windmills generate energy, and that energy is in the form of clients. Certainly, it's the client list and the referral source list, right? That's a lot of wind turbine power, okay, that growing law firms need. As they're growing, they need more clients. The additional turbines of power comes from that goodwill that senior attorneys have developed, because more new matters are going to come in because of that goodwill, the reputation that a senior attorney and a senior attorney-led firm has developed over the course of their careers. The subject matter knowledge, because the growing firm is able to say, look, we now have this attorney that has that number of, let's just say, for example, with a personal injury law firm, that has this number of settlements, of verdicts under his or her belt, or this is the group in an intellectual property, let's say, setting that has the special subject matter knowledge in this area of patent prosecution. And the list goes on in terms of how subject matter knowledge is in and of itself a turbine for generating more growth for a growing law firm in terms of generating clients. And then that digital value. And this is something that absolutely that senior attorneys are really just sitting on, underutilized. And when they join growing law firms can benefit by that career's worth of digital content that senior attorneys can come into a firm, and that firm can benefit by marketing that digital value, converting all of that content into videos, podcasts, news, e-newsletters, tweets, and the list goes on and on. So when we think about that year too early, it's not always peaches and cream. Okay, when you're thinking of selling your law firm and you're joining a growing law firm a year too early, it's not necessarily peaches and cream from the beginning. And that is why we're also recommending for senior attorneys to consider doing this process earlier in the process, because what we have found is that it really takes 4 steps. Once a senior attorney and a senior attorney-led firm joins a growing law firm, for both sides to achieve success. These are not turnkey transactions at this point. These aren't sales of franchises where, let's just say, there's the manual and follow the manual when you're purchasing another franchise unit. There are 4 steps needed to achieve success in law firm sales, and those 4 steps consist of a listening tour. Both sides really need to listen to each other in terms of, this is how we've always done it versus this is how we do it here. After that listening tour, there's adapting to each side, adopting, new processes and new ways to do things. Something as simple as, and it's not necessarily all that simple, but adopting new billing practices, new calendar practices, even just how the firm cultures are going to mesh with each other. And after getting through the listening tour, adapt and adopt, then firms are really able to grow together. And that's when what we find is really when the magic happens, when you take those 5 components of value that we've been discussing, and then the 2 firms have become one and they start growing together. And how do we know that we have success? Is when the senior attorney, is saying, once they've achieved success in joining a growing law firm, wow, I should have done this earlier. And that leads really to what we find 3 typical thoughts. Okay, so when a law firm sale is happening in the appropriate time frame, and here today we're talking about if you're doing the sale maybe a year too early, then what we find is when senior attorneys have that forethought, then we get to these 3 typical thoughts once senior attorneys have transitioned their firms to growing law firms and it's successful. The 3 typical thoughts that we regularly see our clients experience is, number 1 is the relief from no longer having to manage your practice, right? No longer have to make payroll every 2 weeks. No longer have to write the check to a landlord once a month. benefit or really continue to benefit by being outside of the office and meeting with clients via Zoom. The second benefit is that your would-be internal successors who ultimately really didn't want to purchase your practice, but did want to continue practicing with the senior attorney founders of the firm, when they're all still practicing together at a growing law firm, what a relief, okay? It's really a dual win, because the win number one there is that the clients of the senior attorney and the senior attorney-led firm, they will continue to have competent representation, not only by your would-be internal successors who join you, but by that proverbial deeper bench that is available to the senior attorney and his or her clients at the firm that they join. So that's a huge win for the clients in terms of stability. It's also a huge win for those would-be internal successors of yours, your key employees, not only the lawyers, but the parastaff. It's incredibly satisfying for senior attorneys to know that they're still taking care of essentially their staff, albeit by merging their practice with a growing law firm. And that third typical thought is really the enjoyment of being able to spend time with your family and being able to finally take that 3-week vacation that you never were really able to take because you were always minding the store that is your firm while you owned it. And now let's talk about the money. Because in what we call Law Firm Sales 1.0, for those senior attorneys that have the foresight to think about and accomplish selling their firm maybe a little bit early, they're benefiting in the long term in Law Firm Sales 1.0, where the structure of law firm sales as we see it in the mid-2020s and throughout the remainder of this decade as we see it, is that the consideration for your law practice is based upon an earnout that is fee sharing on the revenues generated from your clients and referral sources over a negotiated period of time. And when senior attorneys sell their practice a little on the earlier side, while their book of business is very much intact, and while they'll still have the time after joining a growing law firm to transition their clients and referral sources and even generate more clients and referral sources for the time that they continue practicing in Law Firm Sales 1.0, financially, they can make out very well because they are transitioning, again, those clients and referral sources in consideration for earnout payment terms. Now let's look at when a law firm could be sold a year too late. So now let's look at what happens to a senior attorney or senior attorney-led firm when they sell their practice a year too late. So here we're looking at those 5 components of value. And just a reminder, the 5 components of value are the client list and the referral source list. That's the book of business. The goodwill that a senior attorney and the law firm has developed over the course of a career's worth of practice, subject matter knowledge that they've developed over a course of a career, and digital value. Well, 3 of these 5 chips, when senior attorneys wait too long to consider selling their law practices, they can turn from green to orange. And the primary reason why those 3 chips turn from green to orange is driven in large part by the digital value. That is, we are now in what we call the post-2020 multi-channel digital marketing era for the legal industry. I understand that that was a mouthful, okay? But multi-channel digital marketing means that law firms today are recognizing that attracting new clients is done digitally. And for those senior attorneys that are not focusing on business development from a digital value standpoint, they're not going to be developing as many clients as they did in yesteryear, and their referral sources are starting to retire, and they're not replenishing as many referral sources as much as they did in yesteryear. So by waiting a year too long, your value is going down primarily because your client list and your referral source list is not replenishing as much as yesteryear. And now let's look at why. Post 2020, we had what we all learned, that one word that comes out of 2020. I mean, there's so many words, of course. I mean, COVID-19 is the biggest one. But in terms of a business perspective, okay, the business term of 2020 is pivot. right? That is that the world, we all pivoted in so many ways, and we absolutely pivoted digitally. And what did that do to clients searching for law firms? Clients searching for law firms post 2020 pivoted to searching online. Rather than asking the who do you know question to their uncle, their brother, their teammate, their workout buddy, the list goes on and on. Instead, what we continue to see throughout this decade is that Uncle Google is becoming and has become America's greatest referral source for lawyers. As a result, those senior attorneys that are maintaining a website-only approach and are not adopting multi-channel digital marketing to catch the attention of consumers of legal services, that is clients, they are generating and developing less clients. So now let's look at how that is impacting client revenues. For those senior attorneys that are not adopting multi-channel digital marketing and they are maintaining their status quo. Okay, pre-2020, we had plenty of conversations with our clients about status quo, which was, okay, if today's like yesterday and we think that tomorrow is going to be like today, well then why make change in so many different areas, but in business development in particular? Well, a big change happened in 2020 where law firms recognized that to develop clients, you really need to invest in multi-channel digital marketing. And for those senior attorneys that are not investing in digital marketing and are maintaining their status quo, we're seeing that their revenues are going down. And now let's look at the impact that a decreasing amount of revenues is having on that all-important book of business, okay? Because when lawyers are looking to sell their law practices, and we're asking this question right now, what if you are considering selling your law firm a year too late? Well, if your book of business is not replenishing as much as yesteryear because you're not generating clients digitally, okay, and your referral sources, that key CPA, that business broker, the business banker that sent work to you for years, sometimes even decades, what if they retired before you retire? So you're not generating clients digitally, your referral sources are retiring, well, then your book of business is not replenishing as much as yesteryear, and as a result, the value of your firm is decreasing. In addition, when we think about what is it that senior attorneys present to growing law firms, it's synergy value. So if we look at the synergy value of lawyers and law firms that can wait too long before selling their practices, well, a buying firm wants and needs 4 components of what is typically the synergy value of what senior attorneys present to growing law firms. And that synergy value, first and foremost, is the instant client growth that senior attorneys present. Well, what if your book of business is not replenishing as much as yesteryear because you maintain that status quo? Well, then you have less clients than you used to, and you're not presenting as much synergy value. Next is growing law firms, not only they need your clients, but they need your staff. Most law firms do not have extra capacity to crank out the billable hours that senior attorneys are presenting to growing law firms. And what can happen when senior attorney-led firms are maintaining that status quo and their revenues are going down, as we discussed before, what can happen in that scenario is that your key lawyer or parastaff folks can actually leave your firm. And that means that you're presenting less synergy value to a growing firm because you lack that combined workforce they need. They need the lawyers that you have at your firm to continue doing the work. So if you don't have as much of a staff because they've left your office prematurely, then you're not offering as much synergy value. The cumulative expertise that stays intact. That's what senior attorney and the lawyers at the firm continue to offer. And then the marketing value is still a possibility of growing out, but more and more growing law firms, and we're absolutely doing this research now. Growing law firms are asking, let me see your data analytics. How many Google reviews do you have? How much time are people spending on your website? Where are you in the listings and in the rankings? Okay, so when you're selling the law practice too late, you don't have that data analytics. You're just less marketable than firms that consider selling a year too early. And now let's talk about the money. When it comes to lawyers that are considering selling their law practice a year too late, and let's just talk about what that even means. But a year too late essentially means that your revenues have gone down, you're generating less clients, your staff is not as much as it used to be because people prematurely left. Okay, you're just not going to get as much value for your law firm in Law Firm Sales 1.0 when the sale price is based upon earnout terms dependent upon the revenues that come in from clients and referral sources. If you have less clients and less referral sources, then a growing firm which is seeking to acquire your practice is simply going to pay less, and they may not even be interested in your practice whatsoever if you don't have enough clients and referral sources, and also if you don't have that staff that can come over and continue helping to do the work, because so many firms, growing firms that is, they do not have significant extra capacity to do the work that senior attorneys offer. Hence, we absolutely recommend here in the mid-2020s, as the digital age is upon us, and as many senior attorneys are not necessarily adopting multi-channel digital marketing, to really consider selling that proverbial year too early. That is, selling in the early part or mid part of the mid-2020s, because as this decade continues, and if your book of business is not replenishing as much as it did in yesteryear, then the sale and the value of your practice is just not going to be as much as it is now in the early part of the mid-2020s. Okay, so for our second question today, our second question is, why doesn't my internal successor offer to purchase my law practice? So we get this question all the time, okay? Because if you are a senior attorney or senior attorneys that founded a firm, you've often built a practice, hired one, two, multiple other attorneys at first because you're a great rainmaker, you're generating the work, you're bringing in these key lawyers to do the work, and then fast forward X number of years later, in the mindset of the senior attorney, you're thinking, wow, I am so grateful that, in our example here, that Dave and Carrie, these would-be internal successors, that they're part of our team. They are doing the work. Okay, and in the back of a senior attorney's mind, when the senior attorney is just starting to think about selling the practice, the thought in the back of the senior attorney's mind is typically, okay, maybe someday Dave and Carrie will walk down the hall and they'll offer to purchase the practice. But it's very important to think about, all right, what's the perspective of those would-be internal successors? That Dave and Carrie, in our example, when they were hired by the senior attorney, and the senior attorney here, let's say, is 5+ years out from considering retiring, what's on their mind, right? Their mindset is, wow, this is a really challenging and fulfilling job. They're thinking, I really deserve a raise. I'm busting my hump here. And they're also getting calls from recruiters, and they're not taking those calls because they just have a high satisfaction of really liking their job. Now let's think about, in terms of the perspective of senior attorney and would-be internal successors, when a senior attorney is thinking about 2 to 4 years out. Okay, when a senior attorney is thinking to him or herself, they're 2 to 4 years out from retirement. What we're often hearing from senior attorneys is that they, at some point, ask their would-be internal successors. In our example, this is Dave and Kerry, and they're saying to Dave and Kerry, guys, you guys are amazing. I'm thinking that in the next 2 to 4 years, I'm thinking of retiring. Okay, what does that mean for Dave and Kerry? Dave and Kerry, because they were hired as key employees, their first thought, because they see how hard most senior attorneys work, is, hey, knowing him, he'll never retire. Okay, and they're also typically thinking, all right, well, I'm in this job and I'm saving enough money. I'm about to be able to buy a house. I still have student loan debt that I am thinking about all the time, every month, how to pay that down. I just heard what my boss said to me. Should I start looking for a job? Notice that in all of those thought bubbles that we were just talking about, they're not typically collaborating. That is Dave and Kerry collaborating and saying, wow, this is an amazing opportunity. We could take this firm to a whole nother level, and we could pay off the senior attorney, who we call Bob. We could pay off Bob over a certain number of years and just really blow this firm out of the park. The reason why, and here's the punchline, why it is that these key employees are not having those thoughts, is because the senior attorneys hired them as employees. They didn't go to business school. They went to law school. And it's just not going to be an overnight change just because Bob, in our example, the senior attorney, is thinking of retiring 2 to 4 years out, that they're going to flip the switch from being a grinder, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but to get the work done, get the work done folks at the law firm, to all of a sudden become entrepreneurial would-be owners of businesses. Now in the next sequence, now the senior attorney is getting much closer to retirement. And here Bob is calling in Dave and Kerry into his office, and saying, guys, I just want you to know that I am planning to retire by next ... Typically that's like a year, maybe even longer than a year. Bob's mentality is, okay, I'm letting them know, I'm giving them that proverbial notice that I'm a year out. I mean it this time, and I really am hoping that they are going to now offer to purchase the practice. And our question here is, okay, why don't my internal successors offer to purchase the practice? And that would be the best time, right? We would think that Dave and Kerry would jump on it, that your would-be internal successors would jump on it. Typically, what we hear from our clients is that they'll say, okay, let's talk about it. We'll talk with our respective spouses. But what are they really thinking? What they're really thinking is that I really don't want to own a business. I can't afford to purchase this practice. If my boss retires, I've got to look out for my family. And then, where's that recruiter's phone number? Because I really think I should start looking for a job. And at that point, there's really a fork in the road of what happens. One direction in that fork in the road is what we call a random Tuesday, is that where the senior attorney is just hoping that his or her would-be successors, that they would jump on the opportunity finally to offer to purchase the practice. Instead, because they are key employees, they were hired as key employees, they are key employees, they could very well grab and look for and accept a new job. And that's what we call a random Tuesday event. Because the random Tuesday event for the senior attorney is that your primary billers, okay, these would-be internal successors are also the people that are typically putting up the highest number of hours of billable work, and they're working with often your best clients. That in a random Tuesday event, your would-be internal successor, rather than offering to purchase your practice, could very well leave your practice with clients of yours, and that results in revenues going down in the short term. And then we'll just look longer term in terms of the synergy value Because when senior attorneys are considering selling their law practices, not internally, but to a growing law firm, what is it that growing law firms want and need from senior attorneys? They want the synergy value that senior attorneys in their law firms present. And if a senior attorney, and this absolutely happens in the marketplace, if your would-be internal successors, if they feel that their job is no longer reliable, that it's no longer predictable, and that they are no longer safe in their jobs with the senior attorney, and they leave, well, then their synergy value to another firm that a senior attorney is looking to join has gone down, because the lawyers that left could very well have taken clients with them. But as important in some respects is that if you don't have key lawyers to join you at a growing law firm, some growing law firms, and we see this in the marketplace, will say, okay, you're bringing over to us $1 million in revenue, let's say, but we don't have the people to do it. We would have hoped that you would have had people to do it. And now that your key would-be internal successors have taken a job because they freaked out when you explained to them and really had hoped that they were going to take over the practice, when you let them know that you're planning to retire within such and such period of time, that has actually reduced the synergy value. So it had that random Tuesday impact of short-term loss of revenues, longer-term loss of value. Now let's think about that fork in the road, the other direction that fork in the road can go. When senior attorneys are contemplating to sell their law practice, and they realize, and we often are saying that the writing's on the wall, after X number of years, the writing is really on the wall that your would-be internal successors, that they don't want to purchase your practice, they can't afford to. And for a lot of our clients that realize that, or for those senior attorneys out there, and if you think to yourself, do they really want to purchase your law firm? And if the answer is no, the other direction, and this is really our preferred suggestion to senior attorneys as they're considering selling their law practice, is that you can pursue a growing law firm that wants and needs what senior attorneys have. It's clients, referral sources, and very importantly, that combined workforce, your would-be internal successors that are not interested to purchase your practice. They absolutely want to continue practicing with you. And what we're showing here is that when internal successors, together with their senior attorney bosses, join a growing law firm together, then the team stays together and it generates multiple wins. The wins for the senior attorney is that now the senior attorney knows that he or she can retire, and that his or her clients are in great hands with the staff that he brings over, that the senior attorney brings over, including those would-be internal successors, can continue representing the clients, and then also have the satisfaction that those longtime key employees now just have another employer and can go to bed at night knowing that those people that you really care about, they're almost like sons and daughters in some respects, that they have a new boss, a new firm where they can continue to practice. And for the would-be internal successors, they're also thrilled and they have wins as well. Because what is it that they really wanted at the end of the day? They really wanted to have their salary, their benefits, and their paid time off. They have a tremendous amount of relief because they recognize and realize that purchasing the practice would have been just too risky, and they're very grateful that the team has stayed together. And then let's just look at those typical thoughts that when a senior attorney joins a growing law firm, typical thoughts that the senior attorney has after joining a growing law firm versus pursuing an internal succession plan with internal successors that typically don't want to purchase your practice and can't afford to. Those three typical thoughts are the satisfaction of no longer having to run the practice, the great satisfaction of knowing that your team, your former employees, they're all together typically at the firm that you joined. Huge relief to know that they have continued employment. And then that third typical thought is just the benefit in the terms of that life is short. And we all learned that during COVID, of being able to spend more time outside the office with family and with friends. Okay, so for our third question today, our third question is, how does trust transfer work? with a senior attorney's referral sources? And that question's asked by Jordan Ostroff. So Jordan, thanks so much for your question. And so before we get to the trust transfer on referral sources, let's just look at trust transfer generally. Like, we're often saying that trust transfer is the flux capacitor of how law firm sales work in what we call law firm sales 1.0. And law firm sales 1.0, the buyers of law firms are typically paying a percentage of the collected fees that come in from the clients attributable to a senior attorney. Okay, so it's important for the senior attorney to transfer the trust that their clients have in the senior attorney. So clients trust senior attorney. Senior attorney trusts new lawyers at the firm that senior attorney joins. Therefore, ergo, the clients trust those new attorneys at the firm that the senior attorney joins. It's, hey, I trust this new attorney. Good enough for me, should be good enough for you. Clients say, we're on board. Trust transfer happens. It can happen in seconds, in minutes. Often today happens in a Zoom call or Zoom meeting where senior attorney transfers that trust from client to new lawyers. Now let's look at transferring trust from referral sources to new lawyers at the firms that senior attorneys join. So we're often saying that the book of business that senior attorneys have consists of, let's call it 2 pages of the book. Page 1, clients, stocked with clients, right? Page 2, maybe not as many pages, okay, proverbially, is the referral sources, right? Or the bankers, CPAs, financial planners, friends, brokers of different sorts, right? They've developed trust with senior attorneys over many years. That trust transfer takes more effort, okay? It's very doable, but it's not as simple as the trust transfer from client to new lawyers, because the relationship is a different type of relationship. So as senior attorneys are joining growing law firms, we're often recommending that during the first 6 months to a year, it's just very important for both sides to be listening to each other, adapting, adopting. They have different practices when it comes to business development, and literally the meetings with key referral sources should be rehearsed. We work with and we recommend an integration consultant, a business coach, and I'll just share one example for how this can go awry. We had a client years ago, had a great referral source, referred tons of clients to the senior attorney over the years. So they figured, all right, let's go out to lunch, right? We'll have senior attorney, the owner of the buying law firm and the referral source, let's meet for lunch. They did no practice beforehand. So as it turned out, the owner of the buying firm just talked all the time about himself. No questions to the referral source. Hey, how can I help you? Tell me more about yourself, tell me about your family. What are your hobbies? We know you've referred matters. We'd love for you to continue referring. And so then afterwards, of course, the senior attorney gets the call, right, from the referral source. What the hell just happened during that meeting, right? And it jeopardized that proverbial hen, right? Just to use that metaphor, like the hen that lays the eggs, right? The referral sources, they generate eggs, they generate business for the growing law firm. So it's very important. Jordan, I really appreciate your question, because when a senior attorney is transitioning referral sources, more effort, more time, more empathy needs to be focused on how do we keep that referral source on board to continue referring new matters to the partners at the law firm that senior attorney is joining, because that is not, in basketball terms, that is not a simple layup. Okay, so for our next segment today, our next segment is Poock's Post. So our Poock's Post today is the adoption of digital marketing by law firms in the mid-2020s will further hasten the vanishment of Rainmaker Attorneys. All right, so Rainmaker Attorneys, right? I just think back to law school. I went to law school, age is me, okay, in the late 1990s. And I remember having this, time just sitting in my seat where I sort of like crouched because the business law professor said, okay, it's going to take you, 5 years before you even get in front of a client. Right? And as an entrepreneur, I'm thinking to myself, what are you, crazy? I want to be in front of clients. I want to be developing business. But then as I started practicing, I saw the Rainmakers in action, right? And this is what we call the 1.0 word of mouth era, where the lawyer Rainmakers were out working hard in person, just going through hundreds, thousands of business cards and developing relationships in person so that people would think, oh, you need to go to so-and-so, or let me refer you to this lawyer who's the real go-to in such and such of area of law. Fast forward to Y2K. Okay, Y2K, we thought the world was going to come to an end. It was very exciting. Well, not come to an end, but the wacky stuff was going to happen, right? When, after 11/59/59 on 12/31/1999, okay? But really what Y2K represents in terms of the legal industry is that we started to progress from the total word of mouth era into what we're calling this website plus era. Right, where law firms are starting to recognize that they need to have websites. The forward-thinking firms are starting to publish blogs. They're connecting with their clients via e-newsletters versus mailing out newsletters in the mail. And even more forward-thinking firms are starting to invest in pay-per-click, PPC, and starting to buy Google AdWords. And then 2020, right? 2020, it led to a real disruption, right? We were evolving digitally, but when the world pivoted digitally in 2020, it thrust us from what we call the 2.0 website plus era to where we are now in the 3.0 digital era for the legal industry, because the world just itself, it pivoted digitally in 2020. And now let's look at what that pivot did to the Rainmakers in terms of the shift in consumer attention by clients, right? It didn't just start in 2020, but 2020 in its pivot of the world digitally, it caused clients to more and more look to who we consider America's greatest referral source for lawyers as Uncle Google. It led would-be clients to go straight to Google, okay, versus bypassing what's otherwise really the friction of contacting your friends, relatives, and other contacts in this who do you know and what was the word of mouth era. Now it's so much easier to go to Google and type in, most reviewed lawyer, best attorney near me. And what we're seeing in the marketplace is that shift in the attention of client and behavior by clients is leading more clients to go to law firms that are adopting multi-channel digital media. And that is what's creating what we call the vanishing Rainmaker effect, okay? Whereas that Rainmaker that so many of us remember, okay, in the pre-Google era, who handed out his or her card, in the thousands, okay? In the Google world, well, Google is just working 24/7. You can't be there and everywhere in person, where your would-be client, the attention of that would-be client is going straight to Google and just typing in, hey, who's the best estate planner near me? Who's the best personal injury law attorney near me? Who's the best at writing patents and whatnot? Doesn't mean that people aren't still asking for referrals, but absolutely we are seeing the vanishing of the Rainmaker in the digital era that we are absolutely now in, and there's no genie going back in the bottle. We are in the 3.0 digital era for the legal industry. More and more firms are going to be investing in digital to be attracting the attention of would-be clients. So now let's look at how that vanishing Rainmaker, what's the impact that is having on the all-important books of business for senior attorneys. What we're seeing is that those senior attorneys that are not investing in multi-channel digital marketing, okay, they are not investing in Google AdWords, they're not investing in search engine optimization, they are not present in social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, what used to be Twitter, and of course some lawyers are even on TikTok today, because that medium is absolutely evolving. What we're seeing is that by not investing in digital marketing, senior attorneys in particular, they're not generating as many clients, their referral sources are retiring, and hence their books of business are not replenishing as much as they did in yesteryear. And so now let's look at the money. Because if senior attorneys who were amazing rainmakers, okay, in the pre-Google era, if they continue to not invest in multi-channel digital marketing and not replenish their client lists and referral sources as they did in yesteryear, then they are just not going to realize as much value for their practices, because in today's marketplace, what we see is that in Law Firm Sales 1.0, the consideration for most law firms is an earnout based upon the revenues that are generated from the clients and referral sources that senior attorneys transition to the firms that they're joining. And if you have less clients, because the clients are not finding you as much as they found you in yesteryear, in the digital era, you need, of course, just like yesteryear, you need to be found, right? If you're found, you can do the work. But if you're not being found by clients that are looking for lawyers on Google, you have less clients and you could have less referral sources. Hence, you are not receiving as much value for your law firm as this decade continues. So as we look at the vanishing rainmaker, post-2020, we are in this age of the vanishing rainmaker. The lawyers that used to generate their business in the word of mouth era by handing out their business cards, that age is becoming more and more in our rearview mirror. The now is that business development for law firms in the post-2020 3.0 digital era is happening when clients are searching on Google and other forms of digital media, including social media, and they're learning about their attorneys. Rather than asking for a referral for someone, they are getting to know, like, and trust those attorneys that are investing in multi-channel digital media. I can watch their video, I can read their articles online, I can read reviews about those lawyers. And for those senior attorneys that relied on their rainmaker skills from the past, there were tremendous skills in the past, you're just not going to be generating as many new clients in this age of the vanishing rainmaker. So what to do? For those senior attorneys who who built their books of business in the pre-Google era, they have great books of business. And we see it all the time with our clients. You generated that business with literally blood, sweat, and tears of doing tremendous amounts of business development, and you filled your books of business with clients and referral sources. In terms of the money that you can realize from that book of business, in Law Firm Sales 1.0, you want to be able to take advantage and leverage those clients and referral sources that you spent your career to develop. So our message in the age of the vanishing rainmaker is that great book of business that you developed, we highly recommend for those senior attorneys that are considering selling their law firms to highly consider selling your law practice during the mid-2020s, because if you are not going to invest in multi-channel digital marketing, then that amazing book of business that you developed is not going to replenish as much as it did in yesteryear, and you're just not going to realize as much value from that book of business later in this decade than you will during the mid-2020s. And that is episode 11 of the Ask the Law Firm Seller Show.